On today's episode of Locked On Cougars, I'm going to tell you why the BYU Cougars will always be Utah's little brother and why Utah is still and will continue to be the best team in the state.
Happy April Fools. JT had y'all fooled for just a second there, but I'll reiterate one thing to Ute fans. BYU is and will continue to be Utah's big brother. That's the simple fact of life. But the bigger point to be made here on today's show is that if BYU wants to make a run at the Final Four next year, there are two key things that need to go BYU's way, and they need to happen in relatively quick succession. What are they? Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you for being a part of this meeting every day or with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on today's show, talking about two key decisions BYU basketball awaits that will be key to their chances of making a run at the Final Four next season. We also will talk about BYU football. Their 2025 recruiting class gets even better all the way into late March and early April as the noose is loose for BYU football. We'll talk about that, and then we'll finish up back on the basketball front, albeit talking about BYU legend Lee Cummard finally getting his shot at the helm of the BYU women's basketball program. All right, so without further ado, I said there are two things that BYU needs to go their way if they want to make a run at the Final Four and potentially a national championship next year. Now, this is all revolving around AJ Dybantsa, who, if you did not see his dunk over Angel Reese last night at the McDonald's All-American game, it's a skills competition, absolutely phenomenal. That kid can absolutely fly. His skill set is just preternatural, and he looks like he is the absolute truth and could be an absolute sensation for BYU. But he cannot drag BYU to their first ever Final Four by himself, no matter how good he might be. He needs guys around him to be able to help him along the path. And there are two things that I think that need to happen for BYU to make their path to the Final Four next year capable. We'll go in order of what I believe are the most likely to happen. So number one, Richie Saunders has to run it back for BYU as a senior. Now, at this juncture of the recording of this podcast, yes, I know it is April Fool's Day, but this is no joke. I fully expect Richie Saunders to come back to the BYU basketball program. That's not a big stretch, I don't think, because he has proven, King Tut himself has been a loyal soldier for the BYU basketball program. This is a guy who really bided his time in the program, was a glue guy, a sixth man of the year candidate, and now has emerged as the most improved player in the Big 12 this past season, and most importantly, a first-team all-conference honoree. His capability, his abilities overall, alongside a supreme talent like AJ Dybantsa, seem like a match made in heaven. Because here's the deal with Richie. He does not require the ball to be in his hands. He does not need a high, what they call, usage rate for BYU to be successful. He is actually better off the ball than he is on the ball in many respects, and at least from my vantage point. His ability to spot up for threes, to be that guy who plays off an AJ Dybantsa who will have a gravitational force of his own to attract double and triple teams. Well, all Richie has to do is find himself in open spots. AJ Dybantsa has shown really, really nice ability to find his teammates that are open. And Richie, he is a dead-eye shooter when given those opportunities. And I think that his skill set, everything else he does besides score, his ability to dig out steals, rebounds, to be that pesky defender, just to be the glue guy that he's been his entire career at BYU. BYU needs that alongside an AJ Dybantsa if they really want to go to the Final Four next year. And I think that what Richie brings to the table would be a tailor-made fit to go alongside AJ Dybantsa's skill set. What is the second thing that needs to happen for BYU? I believe it is Egor Demin needs to return for BYU to man the guard spot. Now, could that come at the expense of a guy like Dallin Hall getting upset and ultimately transferring and finding a new place to call home? Maybe so. But here's the deal. Egor Demin is a 6'9" dynamo who has got an incredible ability to set his teammates up and has shown as the season progressed, especially in the NCAA men's basketball tournament, He is an elite talent, and his skill set would only be enhanced by playing alongside Richie Saunders for another year, but also teaming up with AJ Dybantsa. He has acknowledged the fact that the prospect of teaming up with AJ for a year in Provo is really tantalizing to him. Yes, he's dating Delaney Gibb, the best BYU women's basketball player on the campus currently. Yes, he's got connections to Travis Hansen, who is a BYU guy through and through. There are so many things for Egor Dybantsa to consider when it comes to his future, because this is a kid that, if you look at the mock drafts, he's pretty much a consensus top 15 pick. Yes, he's no longer in the top 5 of the projections for the NBA draft, which would be an absolute no-brainer for him to leave and chase that money in the NBA. But if he feels like he is not quite ready for the NBA lifestyle, the NBA game, you know what? Run it back at BYU and show what you're capable of alongside a guy who is likely to be the number 1 overall pick in the next year's NBA draft in AJ Dybantsa. Playing off a guy like that, playing alongside a Richie Saunders, that would be a huge, huge coup to have for BYU, to have 3 of those guys of their ilk on the same roster. I believe the 3 of them would form a fantastic backbone, combined with guys like a Keba Keita, like a Mihailo Boskovic. They would form the nucleus of what could be a Final Four contender, a Big 12 contender next year for BYU basketball. They made an incredible, incredible run this season to the Sweet 16. There's zero doubt about that. We don't need to rehash that in its entirety, but they want to elevate that. They want to make an Elite Eight. They want to make a Final Four. And I believe that having Richie and Egor in the fold alongside AJ Dybantsa will go a long way to helping BYU do that. What's the likelihood that both of these things happen? I would say 25%, because I think one or the other is likely to go against BYU, meaning either Richie or Egor decides that it's time for them to chase their professional prospects at the professional level of basketball. But regardless, either one of them returning to BYU would be huge for the Cougars. If both of them leave, then I would be concerned that AJ Dybantsa might be having to pull a little too much weight that even he could not pull. But there's other things about this that are going to help BYU along the way. Georgia transfer Silas Demari Jr. is currently visiting St. John's. This is according to John Rothstein yesterday. And he said he has plans to both visit UConn and BYU per his father. He's also scheduled a meeting with Duke. He averaged 13.5 points per game and 3.9 rebounds last year for the Georgia Bulldogs. Silas Demari is another guy that if BYU's NIL can make an impact, it would be like getting this kid. St. John's, UConn, Duke. Those are all true Final Four contenders, or at least thought to be that. And if BYU wants to be considered as such, getting a talent like a Demari Jr. into your program would bolster, even if you lose a Richie or you lose a Egor Dybantsa. Silas Demari comes in as a wing player who can fill it up and would be a really, really nice fit playing off AJ Dybantsa. Dybantsa and everything that he brings, the hoopla, the notoriety, if you want to call it that, I guess just the magnetism he brings, because he is one of these premier prospects to Provo, Utah, is going to be attractive for guys to play alongside that. And then when you have the war chest that BYU reportedly has in NIL, that is a nice combo for BYU basketball to go out and retool this lineup. It's not a rebuild. It is a retool of the highest order. Yes, you need to replace a Fousseyni Traore. Yes, you need to find a new Trey Stewart. You need to find a new Mawit Mag. There are going to be guys upon guys who are interested in BYU, and looks like Silas Demari Jr. might be the first of what could be many. But I think if they can land a guy like Silas Demari Jr., be a massive, massive pickup for BYU along the way and bolster, like I said, an already strong nucleus should Richie and Egor decide to run it back for BYU. There's a lot of good things happening for BYU basketball. There is potential by the bucket load for BYU to make that run at a Final Four and potentially a national title next year. But you need to get elite talents, and getting a guy like a Silas Demari Jr. to play alongside AJ Dybantsa, and getting a Richie to come back, and getting Egor if he decides to run it back for another year. Those are the type of players that can elevate BYU to that next level and push them past the Sweet 16 into an Elite Eight, into that Final Four that BYU's been chasing for decades at this point. That's all on the table, but we'll see how it all shakes out, because these guys have to make their own individual decisions, and I don't think a single one of them, decision-wise, one will affect the other, at least at this juncture. Could it down the line? Maybe so, but expect Kevin Young and company to do a really, really thorough job in finding the best talent they possibly can out there for BYU basketball. All right, coming up next, we're going to flip over to football. BYU's 2025 recruiting class keeps adding absolute diamonds to this class as late as now, what is early April. Well, the noose is loose. Who is Nusi Taumueapeo, and what does he offer to BYU football? We're digging into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Now, Monarch Money's here for you guys. When it comes to you looking at your bank account, you're always kind of wondering, hey, where did all my money go? Well, here's the thing. Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, and a whole bevy of other things, it's easy to lose track of where that money is going. That's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So stop having to just manage your money, and more importantly, start building your wealth. Managing money with your partner is obviously smoother than ever. It can be a point of consternation. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that seems to come with financial matters among partnerships. Take control of your finances today and do it with our friends over at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, all of us want to go out to different events, no matter what you're into, whether it's sports, whether it's, I don't know what you're into, gaming, comedy, theater, no matter what you're into, Game Time's got the tickets for you guys. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing those unforgettable moments, but everything else under the sun that you want to go to. There's no place like experiencing that big moment in person. Getting tickets should not be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute tickets at unbeatable prices. Obviously, you can go online, check out the Game Time app or their online site with their amazing deals on huge matchups coming up, no matter what you are into, sports and otherwise. And the best part is they have the lowest price guarantee. Your Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference of the price of those tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I want to say a public thank you to all of you out there. We have crossed the 10,000 subscriber threshold on YouTube. Today, funny enough, is our 3-year anniversary of doing this podcast on YouTube. We did about 3.5-ish years audio only before we got into the YouTube sphere. And I'll tell you what, YouTube has completely opened the floodgates in terms of just opening the door to thousands of Cougar fans out there like yourselves who have found this show. And 10,000 subscribers is nothing to sniff at. Yes, we are not the biggest podcast out there in the world. There are much bigger and better podcasts, but the bigger point I want to make is thank you to the 10,000 plus of you who believe in us on YouTube. There are thousands more of you who listen to us on various audio formats, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, iHeart. There's so many different ways to consume this podcast. And to each and every one of you, I say this often, thank you for the support. It doesn't go unnoticed. The love, the I don't know, the overall support you guys give to this, and it means the world to me. So thank you for doing that. All right. That being said, let's talk BYU football. They got another big pickup as part of the 2025 recruiting cycle. That is Nusi Taumueapeo from Saratoga Springs, Utah, and Westlake High School. Yes, Saratoga Springs is where I live. I have had a chance to watch Nusi play a fair amount for the Westlake Thunder. And yes, while Westlake may be one of the teams that is usually more near the bottom of their region standings, obviously playing in what they like to call the SEC of Utah high school football, was Region 4, it's moved region names, but we're talking about the Corner Canyons, the American Forks, the Lone Peaks. They have been in that region for years. And yes, it's been a tough slog for Westlake, but does not mean that Westlake has not been producing top-tier talent, and Nusi is just the latest to come out of Westlake High School. A 4-star talent who originally signed and committed with Stanford, and then in the wake of the Troy Taylor firing last week, it was last week, he decided he's going to open things up. He asked for a release from his signing with Stanford. They obviously released him from that and decided to start looking around. And it's not that BYU was the only program out there that was willing to say, hey, we'll take you right now. There were a handful of others, and he has had high-profile offer after high-profile offer throughout his recruiting process. We're talking the who's who of college football came to Westlake High School to talk to Nussi, and as his Twitter handle says, the noose is loose. And the thing I love about this is this adds another premier pass rush talent to BYU's defense. Ephraim Asiata was a really, really nice pickup for BYU, and I think that he's going to carve out a bigger and bigger role for himself in time with the BYU football program. The one thing that Ephraim does not have that Nussi already has coming into BYU as a true freshman is Nussi Taumweapea is a legit 6'2", 230 to 240-pound bowling ball of pure fury rushing the quarterback. I tried yesterday. I mentioned when we talked about Taigechi and his commitment to BYU, I couldn't get the huddle highlights to work. I think I've got an issue with my StreamYard. I'm going to continue to work on this guy. I would love to show you what I see from Nussi Taumweapea. I will encourage you to just Google Nussi Taumweapea huddle and watch his highlights. He gets after the quarterback with a relish, a passion, just a driving desire to inflict as much pain as possible on opposing quarterbacks. I don't know how much of a role he can carve out for himself as a true freshman for BYU, especially among a defensive end core that's got a lot of bodies in it. But the one thing that he brings that I think that he and guys like Ephraim Asiata can offer that you can use in specialty packages is say, Nussi, you're rushing the quarterback, go get him. That's what Nussi Taumweapea will be able to offer to BYU as soon as this fall. He absolutely brings it. And it's not that he's a one-trick pony when it comes to rushing the quarterback. He's got the ability to drop into coverage. He's got the ability to play the run really, really well as a linebacker. I expect him to be one of these hybrid guys that at times drops into coverage for BYU despite lining up a defensive end. He could be in a 2-point stance, a 3-point stance. It doesn't matter. Opposing offensive tackles are going to learn that this kid has got incredible closing speed. He's got a really, really advanced skill set in terms of using his hands to shed blocks. And once he gets to the quarterback, it's straight violence. And I've seen him with my own eyes multiple times. I've called games he's played in. And the other side of it that I love about him is he's a true team player. Last year, Westlake dealt with a bevy of quarterback injuries, and as the season progressed, they essentially just had no options on the roster. So what did they do? Said, we're going to go Wildcat. And Noose, you're going to be our Wildcat quarterback. And I called a game against Lone Peak that Lone Peak, Westlake, they all knew that Nussi Taumweapea was going to run the football at quarterback on offense. All Nussi did was stick his nose in there behind his offensive line and pick up as much yardage as he could. Yes, Lone Peak was about as stingy a defense as you will see in the high school ranks in Utah high school football. But Noose produced at that level, and he's a true team player because, like I said, he easily could have said, Coach, I'm a one-way guy. I play defense. I'm not too keen on playing Wildcat quarterback and getting plastered by opposing linebackers, defensive ends, and defensive tackles. No, he didn't say that at all. He took the challenge and he produced, even though everybody, and I'm sitting up on the top of a press box hundreds of feet away. I knew he was running the football. The opposing team knew he was running the football, and all he did was find a hole and find creases and produce for Westlake High School. That told me a lot about the character of this young man. And yes, the fact that he was enrolling at Stanford means he's got high academics and will fit in, obviously, on that side of things when it comes to BYU. He talked after he committed to BYU to 24/7 Sports. He told Blair Angelo that he's looking forward to playing in front of a packed audience. And he's been to a number of BYU games on unofficial visits. The one thing that Stanford, no matter who they recruit, they cannot sell this, is a sold-out, frenzied crowd. That just does not exist at Stanford. They get 5, maybe 10,000 people out to watch their games. And let's just put it this way, the vast majority of those actually at the games are more interested in other things than the actual football product on the field. Back-to-back 3-9 seasons for Stanford. The Cardinal that were so good in the late 20-aughts into the early 20-teens, they have fallen on hard times and just fired their head coach. They brought in Frank Reich as an interim coach. There's a lot of things going against Stanford right now, but that does not mean that they are not attractive. But Noose decided, you know what, with Troy Taylor, the uncertainty, I want to go somewhere else. And he turned to his hometown team because Provo, he grew up in Saratoga Springs in Utah County, BYU is it. And I can assure him, if he's watching this podcast, he will have 60,000 plus people in the stands at Lavelle Edwards Stadium who will be more than happy to cheer him on. The student section and the lay fan themselves, no matter who it is in Cougar Nation, you're going to love this kid. I absolutely love what I see from him on film. I love what I've seen from him with my own eyes. He looks like a premier talent that could be the next great BYU pass rusher. And I sincerely hope he lives up to the billing, because he has got all the talent in the world. There was I think it was it Greg Biggins from 24/7 Sports says that you can see a little bit of Troy Polamalu in him, albeit playing a different position, because Troy Polamalu had the hair flowing out of his helmet, much like Nusi does. You can see that. Troy Polamalu, all he wanted to do playing football was inflict pain on whoever he was hitting. Well, I can tell you, Noose wants to do that exact same thing, and he'll do it for the BYU football program. And I think the Cougars got a major pickup about as late in the recruiting cycle as you possibly can make it in the 2025 recruiting class. But all the better, the more the merrier. It's all good news for BYU. Adding a like Nusi Townway Payao, 4-star talent, premier kid, just in terms of him being a human being. And the nice part is he looks like he can make an impact as soon as this fall as a true fit freshman for the BYU football program. So get ready. The noose is about to be turned loose for BYU, and I, for one, cannot wait to see it all go down. All right, coming up next, we'll flip over to BYU basketball one more time to go into the women's basketball side of things. Our good friend, Lee Cummard, the former All-American BYU men's basketball player, he is now the new head coach of BYU women's basketball. What does he offer that other coaches like Amber Whiting might not have been able to offer to BYU? We'll delve into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Post District, another local sponsor here on the show. They are home to 4 of Salt Lake's newest and most stylish apartment buildings: the Register, Post House North, Post House South, and 801 Flats. Each of these residences offers its own unique take on luxury or urban living, no matter what you're looking for. They got features like waterfall kitchen islands, vaulted ceiling, floor-to-ceiling windows, spacious patios, and most importantly for many of us, a walk-in closet. Enjoy premium amenities, including the city's largest residential gym, a year-round pool, a golf simulator, massive TV wall for sports watching, parties, and more, all anchored in a one-of-a-kind community. No matter what you're into, they've got options for you guys over at Post District. Step outside and find yourself immersed in Salt Lake's hottest dining and nightlife scene with award-winning spots like Urban Hill, Mental Ramen, Level Crossing, and Sunday's Best just steps away. If you're into the food scene or anything else, they've got it literally right there for you guys. So whether you're looking for a studio, a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartment, or even a penthouse, find your perfect home today. Visit liveatpost.com or call them at 801-590-6247. Mention this ad and mention that Locked On Cougars sent you for an exclusive incentive available only to our listeners. But once again, visit liveatpost.com or call them today, 801-590-6247. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, I mentioned that we've crossed the 10,000 subscriber threshold on YouTube. Well, we also have a fantastic goal to get to a set number of Insider Group members on our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. If you would like to be a part of that, join us today. It's just $5 a month to get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports that I'm hearing. The best part is it comes to your phone in the form of a text message. You're not having to go to a message board or log on to a website to get the inside intel that you crave. Join us today, $5 a month, but more importantly, you get a 14-day free trial to be a part of the group and see if it's the right option for you guys. So join us today. That's the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link to join is in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, at the outset of this conversation, I just want to say, first off, congratulations are in order to BYU legend Lee Cummard. He has finally got his first full-time head coaching position. Yes, he filled in as an interim head coach during the COVID season when Jeff Judkins was out due to COVID-19 issues, and he did a really good job. Won 3 straight games as BYU's interim head coach during that period as an assistant coach under Jeff Judkins. Lee, crazily enough, has been 7 years on the BYU women's basketball staff, working for Jeff Judkins, obviously, ultimately emerging as associate head coach, held that same post under Amber Whiting for the past 2 seasons, and now gets his opportunity to make his own imprint on BYU women's basketball. Here's the thing I know about Lee Cummard. He is a competitor, and he is a competitor of the highest order. I don't know how many of you know about his recruiting background. I'll give you a little bit of insight. When he was coming out of the Mesa area down there in Arizona, BYU was still kind of coming out of what had been a really, really rough run of the late 90s. Remember, it took McKelly Wesley, some Herculean efforts from Steve Cleveland to really get BYU elevated to the level that they hoped to be at. Well, Lee Cummard was a premier talent, and he was looking at options up and down the West Coast. He could have picked a number of programs. He was looking at programs high and low, both at the Power 5 level at that point, but also considered BYU. He was not all that keen on BYU for a long period, as I understand it, but ultimately decided to take a chance on BYU, and history was the story that came out of this. He was an All-American both his junior and senior year. He was the Slim Reaper before Kevin Durant came along, it felt like. Remember, Lee, he is not the stockiest individual, but he was an absolute assassin on the court. I loved watching Lee play. He was so much fun to watch, and he has a burning desire to win at an extremely high level. He has stuck around BYU when he didn't have to get an opportunity to be a head coach of the BYU women's basketball team. Quite frankly, I thought he should have gotten the gig when Jeff Judkins decided to leave the program and step down from his position a few years back. I thought Lee had obviously shown himself capable, had been, as I said, the associate head coach, had done a really, really nice job under Juddy's direction. But even when he was passed over, he was loyal to the royal blue and white and stuck around in Provo, and that's a credit to him. And now he gets his opportunity. I think Lee is going to do a really, really nice job. Yes, there are going to be questions out there as to why BYU couldn't land a Kevin Young equivalent as the head coach for their women's basketball program. You know what? I trust that Tom Homo, Brian Santiago, as well as the rest of the people involved in this coaching search did their due diligence. They reached out to options out there and talked to multiple people. And you know what? Sometimes the best candidates are those who are sitting right there in front of you at BYU. And that, in this case, is Lee Cummard. He has got a burning passion to lead BYU women's basketball back to what they were under Jeff Judkins. When Juddy left, he left on a really, really high note. The program was not broken by any means. And yes, they have struggled the past couple of seasons with losing records, missing out on the postseason. Did a really good job under Amber Whiting attracting high-level talent, but it really didn't work out the way that anybody anticipated it would for Amber Whiting. And I think in retrospect, had I've been in charge of BYU basketball, which I will never be, but I would have actually, if you wanted Amber Whiting to be the head coach, the best bet you probably could have done is have her join Jeff Judkins' staff for a couple of seasons and get trained up as to what to expect as a head coach. More importantly, at the West Coast Conference level, and then ultimately at the Big 12 level. It was not, I don't think, a super fair shake to throw Amber Whiting into the fire like she was, but you know what? History is history, and that's what it is. But Lee Cummard, the one thing that I think that he has going for him is he's seen what BYU women's basketball can be under Jeff Judkins. He has seen it. He helped build it. He knows what it's going to take to succeed at BYU. Now he's got to translate that and make his own spin on it and make his own imprint as the head coach, because he can't just copy wholesale what Juddy did, because Juddy never coached at the Big 12 level. He obviously helped get BYU ready for that level, but never ultimately coached at the Power 4 level. Well, Lee's first head coaching job comes as a Power 4 head coach, and it is going to come with bumps. It's going to come with just issues that he couldn't imagine having faced. But the nice part is, knowing what I know of Lee Cummard, he will work diligently through it, and he will find solutions. He did it as a player for BYU. He's one of the premier guys during the kind of that transition from the Steve Cleveland era into the Dave Rose era, and was absolutely phenomenal for the Cougars. He's played professionally. He was an assistant for BYU men's basketball. He's a graduate assistant under Dave Rose. He has seen high-level winning at BYU, and now he gets to put his own imprint, his own spin, his own influence on BYU sports, and I wish him well. I think Lee is a great, great hire for BYU, and call me biased, call me what you will. I think this is going to work out extremely well for BYU if Lee can do what I believe he can do for the BYU women's basketball program. He has seen at its highest. He's seen it at its lowest. He knows what it's going to take. And I don't think he is under any illusions that it's going to be a really snap of the fingers, quick fix for BYU women's basketball. But knowing what I know of Lee, he will give his absolute all, and it is a well-deserved opportunity for him to lead the BYU women's basketball team, and I'm looking forward to covering a little bit more as he takes over here. Obviously, we spend a lot of time on men's basketball, and for good reason, because it garners a whole lot more eyeballs. Football for obvious reasons as well. But BYU women's basketball, when it's at its peak, it's a very, very popular sport on campus. And I'm hoping that Lee Camard can get it back to the level that Juddy had it at and maybe elevate it just a little bit further now at the Power 4 level as a member of the Big 12 Conference. All right, that is going to do it for this Tuesday edition of the show. As always, thank you for all y'all's support. You guys are the absolute best. I tell you all the time that I cannot do what I do without you guys and the support you give us. So subscribe, rate, review, share this with your family and friends. Continue to build this audience both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. But as I always say, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And more importantly, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.